I got to say, New Amsterdam Radio is brought to you in part by Anchor FM. Have you ever thought about making your own podcast? You see, when I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps people like to listen? How do I make money from my podcast? And most importantly, I don't want to deal with cables and wires and all those things. You see, the answer to every single one of these questions is pretty simple. Anchor. Anchor is the one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. And best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And you can use your phone, which is pretty awesome. Now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. So if you ever wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start. That's anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. Hello, everyone. You're locked into New Amsterdam Radio, the podcast for creatives. As always, my name is Flobo Boyce, and I want to thank you so much for checking out the show. And as this show gets bigger and better, I want to say thank you so much for sharing the show specifically. Not just listening. Listening is great, but sharing the show and letting other people know about New Amsterdam and let them know that, you know, as long as you have a cool idea in your mind, you are a citizen, you are a member of the city for creatives. Now, my guest this episode, this bonus episode, if you will, is a really good friend of mine from back in the day, back in the undergrad era, and it's a very distinct part of my life, and because for most people, going to college is when you really see a spectrum of ideals and values and backgrounds and things like that. And it really, for me, was no different. I grew up in the city in New York, and I had an idea how people thought, how people acted, what society was in total. And I went to Flagler College, which was a small, well, still is small, but it was a smaller liberal arts college in North Florida, or as I like to call it, South Georgia. And it was a whole different world of seeing different perspectives and different ways of looking at the world. And it was always great to actually visited the campus this year. So it's always great to see how it's grown. But Nathan Spicer, today's guest, is a storyteller and one that I met during my time at Flagler College. And to be able to listen in and see how he looks at the world and how his viewpoint has changed and how it's become so much more filled in. Like, you know, we were all like sketches on a napkin at 18, 19, 20 years old. And now we're seeing the whole vivid coloring book. That was a lot of fun. We caught up. We talked about trying to plan a birthday. My birthday, actually, this is going up a couple days before my actual birthday. And how do you do that when most of the state of California is still in lockdown? So you're actually going to get the tail end of that conversation in progress. I was going to cut it out, but I thought it'd be a cool way to show you how, just like without missing a beat, we just went back to like how we did back in the day. It had been like over a decade since I spoke to Nathan, but it felt like he was a friend I just saw the week before. So without further ado, as they say, Nathan Spicer is talking about the written and spoken word. Kids, and you're just like, okay, well now what? We're in month 3 of the pandemic, so I can't even do the tacky pandemic-themed party. You know? Nah. It's just like...
In my case, forget even the pandemic. I get lost at 35, I'm going to blank. I won't do shit. If I make some prediction about 1 year down the line and it's some big achievement, in 5 years I'll be married. In 5 years I'm going to be in a gutter, absolutely single as all hell. There's no way I'm achieving whatever that grandiose thing is.
Are you single and loving it or single and going, this sucks? Because I'm kind of in both camps at once. Is that weird?
I'm in the camp that both suck. When I'm single, I'm no, I'm kind of lonely and bored. And then when I'm with somebody, I'm please stop talking to me.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's there's no
peace.
There's no peace.
middle ground. There's no middle ground. Oh man, Nathan Spicer, it's been literally a decade and change, bro. I don't
It's been
know.
a long ass time.
I don't know what you're up to. I mean, I know what you're up to, but I mean, like how is the post college adult life treating you? Are you like putting in the headlock? Is it a struggle every day? Are you crushing it? Like overall thoughts, man? Because I'm enamored, bro. Like I see you doing things on Twitter. I see you doing big things. We'll get to in a second. So I'm a big fan.
Yeah, dude, all my 172 Twitter followers are vastly impressed.
Just get fake ones. Man. Everyone's doing it. Yeah, just get.
And actually, I got the vast majority of those when I first started working at Pace. It was like a decade ago, almost right out of college. It was like a music magazine, and this is back when there was like Follow Friday. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember
like
those.
In the initial days of Twitter. Yeah. So there was one that was put out by like my boss, who of course had like connections to all of the major artists and industry and whatever. So it was like, follow all these people. I got like 180, and then over a 10-year span, I've managed to lose 8.
Keep it consistent.
Yeah, man. I'm staying. It's steady. It's a steady road.
Yeah.
Which basically, I guess I could also view it as my personality hasn't changed in a decade.
That's good.
If the same amount of people are still following me,
yeah,
I mean, like, basically the same people too, then they're like, well, I like what he was doing a decade ago. He's still basically that person, so I'll continue following him. So, no.
He doesn't bother me, and he's not an egg. Remember back in the day where you can have an account without an image, you know?
Oh yeah. Actually, somebody's just pointed out earlier today that I never remembered, but it was totally accurate. Like in the beginning of the internet, everybody was afraid to use their real name. So like everybody's email address was some weird alias, your like AOL screen name was some weird thing. Like nobody was just Nathan Spicer or anything. Now we're like, fuck it, have all my privacy. I don't care.
Yeah. I hope it's not that easy. Privacy. What's up with that? But look, if I'm at a party, this is the thing I always ask my guests. I'm at a party, and I'll say, oh, this is my buddy Nathan. He is, and you're a man of many slashes. So what's the best way to describe what you do?
Man of many slashes.
That sounds really aggressive.
It's only tires, man.
Okay. Yeah. All right, yeah.
Which is still aggressive. It's still aggressive, but it's inanimate objects.
It's usually justified.
Yeah, mostly police cars. Don't tell him I said that.
He's located at this address.
Nowadays, it's okay at pretty much all addresses, thankfully. Or at least many. What was the question? Oh, at a party, how would I describe myself?
Yeah.
I would probably say writer first, and I would just leave it at that. Like, everything else is so tangential to that and secondary in terms of priority. And plus, if I start going down the road of all the different things I can do, then it's just, one, it sounds like I'm bragging. Two, it takes fucking forever to even explain what a bunch of these things are. Like, I can't, like, if I were to have Thanksgiving dinner and tell my aunt that, I work with Google Analytics a lot. Like, that's a very fundamental thing for somebody my age, but, like, she has no fucking idea what that is. She knows what Google is, but nothing beyond that.
What's wrong with bragging?
So, if I just say, that people understand, because they've been doing that since literally they were 0. So, well, 2, whatever. So, everybody can kind of wrap their heads around, are you a writer? What do you write? Like, books or short things? Okay.
Yeah, so I remember because we used to go to the same college way back in the day, good old Flagler College, which I actually went to back this March for Com Week, and it's way different. And if you want to get into it, we totally can, because there's actually like, it's like the city's given up and said, college, just do whatever you want, just bring the tourists in, you know? But it was interesting. But the thing is, you were writing more like nonfiction stuff. You wrote in the school newspaper, I think. And you got that job writing for music sites? What definitely never school newspaper. I was one of the. I'm going to put it up there in terms of people who still got good grades, but were like fucking god awful students. That was me as an English major. I think I finished. No, I'm going to firmly say I don't think I finished a single book that was assigned to me.
I read Spark Notes almost exclusively, and this was the reason why. First of all, I didn't care about the books they were assigning me. Secondly,
and Spark Notes are way better than Cliff Notes.
That's true. But what I found is like my scores ended up being way better on these tests because all the tests ended up being were like quizzing you on knowledge of characters and shit. So if I didn't get lost in the plot and the story and all that stuff, which could kind of convolute things, it was way easier just to look at Spark Notes and get like this really brief summary of who was who and like the three major things they did, and that's all the test would include. And so my scores ended up being better. So I just went with it.
So you're just a prodigy then, which is that inherently smart. You just cut the corners and got at the same time.
No. I wouldn't say prodigy. I would say really good at not doing shit that I don't want to do.
I can't have you around if I say we went to the same school. I can't be like, yeah, bro, I just totally phoned it in. I don't know why. Thanks, bro. No,
I will say this. I'll say this. What I did not phone in, though, was anything that actually had creative writing involved in it, like even term papers.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because I liked the writing aspect of it. It was just like, and this was something I know this is also another tangent. This is where my brain works. Just a little.
Tangents.
Cool. I remember being in high school and being assigned the Scarlet Letter and being through like the third paragraph with this guy describing a cupboard. 3 paragraphs on a cupboard.
Huh.
That has nothing to do with the story because they're paid by the word. And I remember reading it and going, this is weird. And then I connected it back to 7th grade when I was assigned Call of the Wild. And I remember being in 7th grade and being like, all right, well, they've assigned me a book where the main character is a wolf living in Alaska in like 1712. I don't think I can relate to this because I'm 12 and not a wolf. and then they assigned Great Expectations, where one of the main characters was an 82-year-old woman, and it was all about like societal or upper class society and stuff. And I'm still 12. I'm still 12. Watching Ninja Turtles. Like I can't get into any of this. And then it felt like every book that was assigned to me, like till basically the end of college, was some approximation of that, where it was assigned because it's regarded as a classic, and that is the only reason it's assigned. It's not whether a kid is interested in it or not, and I think that's why a lot of kids end up hating to read, because they're assigned things they don't like to read. The most ironic thing I think I still hear these days is when somebody says, I hate reading, while they're scrolling through their 8,000 text messages that they have with their friends, which is literally reading. It's just different words coming from people you like. Right. So if there were more books where the words were coming from people they like, they'd probably be more inclined to read it.
And as you being a writer, you made that decision to say, this stuff sucks, I'm going to make my own? Like, what was the jumping off point? Like, why did you decide to jump in there?
Actually, you know what? I don't think there was seriously not a decision, really. It was, I remember the day, though. I remember I had a job as a web editor in some giant glass building in Atlanta. This was also when I came to the realization that there was one day that I was sitting there. I'm going to link both of these. There was one day I was sitting there, bored out of my mind, and I realized I'm in a box, inside a box, inside a box, inside a box, inside a box. What I mean is, I'm inside the computer screen, which is a box. I'm inside of a cubicle, which is a box. I'm inside of the floor, which is a box. Inside of the floor is a box within the building, which is a box within the block, which is a box. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to do something else with my life because I think I'm losing my mind. And it wasn't too soon after that I was just sitting around going, I wonder if I could write a novel. And then I did, and it's god awful, but I did.
My novel isn't great either. My novel totally sucks. I can't lie.
Oh no, the first one I wrote, Jesus Christ. Oh no, I would rather there were videotape. Why did I call it videotape?
Because we're old.
Footage, fucking old. You're bringing it down to me. Footage of every sexual encounter I've ever had, including the first one, rather than any single page of that first book I And then, but after that, because I did it, I was like, well, it's technically possible. And I'd gotten in the habit of writing like 1,000 words a day, or 2,000 at that time. And my head has a pretty hard time letting go of something it gets like a routine about. Pretty severe OCD in some cases. But because I had my brain kind of focused on this thing anyway, and it was kind of compelling me to do it anyway, I continued doing it and finishing more and more and more things. And so now I've written 12 of them. But yeah, there was no like sitting around going, I'm going to be a famous author. It was sitting around going, I'm fucking bored and I need to do something creative.
Do you have a theme that throughout, or like a genre writer, or just wherever story I think is your fancy? Do you have a focus, or what kind of stories do you write?
That's another man of many slashes, I guess. Although ironically, not horror. There's no horror, which is, although some of my stuff is pretty disturbing, but I wouldn't call it horror. Like, I'm not trying to scare people. So yeah, I mean, the trilogy I'm working on now is about the Greek gods getting back control of the earth, but they suck at it because they haven't done it in 3,000 years, so everything goes catastrophically wrong. And then I have another book where a 16-year-old girl meets a 16-year-old boy and they fall in love, but find out their parents are having an affair. So it's like very opposite ends of the spectrum.
Both of them are not comedies, though, so that counts.
The first one sure as hell is. The second one, the first one is, it's a comedy because they're all just completely inept. Like, they all just suck at what they do.
Right.
I made it a point, because I hated reading so many ancient text bullshit, to take out like all the formal language from their speaking, because I just can't stand reading that stuff.
Right.
Because it's just not fun. So yeah, I modernized all their language. They swear.
So what's your approach to writing? Do you start with idea first, or do you character first, or does it matter on the project? Like, where does it start in the blank page?
Usually it's an idea. Although in many cases, I just sit down with nothing and start writing and come up with something. And I found out that actually works really, really well. There's like, it's akin to if you take singing lessons, like you just warm up your throat. If you just start writing utter fucking nonsense, like from the back of your brain, eventually it kind of turns into something narrative forming, because our brains are just wired to find stories and things. Which is kind of interesting. So I do come up with stories that way. Most of the time, there's a very large idea, but I don't know how any of it plays out. Like, I just had the concept of the Greek gods getting back control of the earth. I didn't know what the story was. So yeah, it starts with an idea, and then a lot of times the way I write it is without much knowledge of what's going to happen next. I have a general idea, but I'm not very great at outlining or anything that someone would regard as like, someone could regard as busy work. Inevitably, and it's not because I don't want to or I'm lazy about it. I've tried. It's just that most of the time when I have an outline, the story will veer away from it anyway. So it ends up breaking. So I just stopped bothering with it. And I guess my best analogy I've heard is from Anne Lalonde, who said, writing fiction is like driving at dark, where you can really only see what the headlights are touching. You know, there's like this vast stuff coming up ahead, but you just can't see it.
Sure.
And that's what it feels like.
Well, so so many people out there that say, look, man, when I get some time off, and there's not a pandemic, or there is a pandemic, I want to write the great American novel, and it never gets done. You know, someone who's written multiple, like, what is the biggest hurdle when it comes to actually sitting down and doing it, really? In your opinion?
For someone for me, or for someone who generally struggles to like actually sit down and write something.
Struggles, the unwashed masses who haven't read their book yet. Those people.
I think people. One, there are already so many people who don't like reading, but because they have in their head all those really terrible books, and I think because those books are taught at such a young age, they leave such an immense impression on what reading and writing feels like. And I think some people think they have to go write The Great Gatsby, or that if they write a novel, it's going to be that. And so people's expectations and like start at a pretty high place. But writing is exceedingly hard, especially writing a novel, because it's nothing that really anyone ever teaches you how to do. Unless you go to like grad school or something. So I think for a lot of people, there's an initial just getting smacked in the face with how hard this is thing. And as soon as it starts feeling hard, then you're reminded of how long this is going to take. Because I think a lot of people just, their experiences are like they wrote term papers in college or whatever else, but they had never written 80,000 words for the same thing before. So I think it's just kind of the snowball effect where people start becoming more and more pessimistic about their ability to do it. And I think that just starts with where expectations are. And I think that's part of what helped me is where I didn't have any. I was just like, I didn't know the novel. Because I had no fucking expectation, I just continued writing. I didn't care whether it was good. There's also, although I am reminded of Mike Birbiglia thing, and this will help a ton. Mike Birbiglia said he has this one bit. He's a comedian, and he has a bit about when he first started doing comedy. He had this one show where before he went out, it was like at this really gross strip mall, and he threw up out of nerves outside the club before he went in. They called his name. He completely fucking bombed. He got in his gross 1992 station wagon or whatever it was and drove back to New York. Walked back into his apartment, and his girlfriend's there, and she went, "How'd it go?" And he went, "Great." Because in his head, it had gone great, because there has to be some element of complete delusion about your own ability when you start out doing this stuff.
True. Because
if you continually objectively evaluate your ability to I don't know, Neil Gaiman or some other immense author, then yeah, you're gonna look like shit. I still look like shit compared to Neil Gaiman. Most people do. Almost every author does. He's Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, he has a TV series and books. Yeah, it's different, totally different.
Every book he's ever written has become a movie. He's written short stories that have become movies, which I still don't know what it's called.
But you made a good point there, Nathan. I mean, I got to be honest with you. Because I do stand up too, and it is lots of times where I bombed nationwide. I flew out to Dallas and bombed. I flew out to Florida and bombed. But then there's that thing where it's like, oh, I did the process, and I can't tell people that I'm having that because I know I am growing, even though the net result is me puking in a trash can somewhere. Right?
Would you argue that's the net result or a symptom? I would say the net result is you're gaining confidence through puking.
Yeah, through puking. That's right. I have thrown up nationwide. No, not really. But it's a good point you mentioned about the process. I think a lot of viewers of New Amsterdam are on their journeys about trying to make it happen, or that inciting incident to jump in there. You're doing it. Now, if I can ask you about the spoken word, that's a whole different beast. I think you're one of the few people that I know that even attempt it. Do you even call it spoken word? Is that still a good term for it, or has it evolved past that?
I find that term really pretentious, and okay. I think it stems from, and this is me. I find it pretentious, and I find it pretentious on behalf of people who want to do something like that, but because of what spoken word commonly connotes is you're going to rhyme everything. It's rap, but in sort of a free form, rappers acapella anyway. But you know what I mean? That's what spoken word used to be attributed to, and exclusively that. But it has evolved. Just, I think the new word now really is just storytelling. Because there's a large discrepancy between spoken word and storytelling. If you think of them in terms of what I was describing, what I've used or spoken word as, just based on when I first came across it when I was 14. I think I saw something on HBO. I don't know what the channel was. But that's what it was for a decade. That's what spoken word was. It was just rhyme, everything had the same kind of cadence and rhyme. It was about a topic, and you had a viewpoint and an angle. It was almost like a persuasive argument. And then storytelling came along, and it was just literally like, take what you tell your friend at the bar while you're like 2 martinis in, and go on stage and tell that in front of a stranger. Like that's to me, that's kind of all it is. Yeah. And there's the only difference I see between any person who's telling stories in front of a bunch of people, it's just where your boundaries are, like how far you're willing to go in terms of revealing yourself or revealing only very slim portions of yourself.
And the decision though, like, because a lot of people write, but your decision to go, I'm gonna write and perform, was that a big one, or were you like, no, this is a natural extension of what my art is?
You know, I have no idea. I don't know why I try so many things. I think I'm just in an endless quest because I have chronic depression. This is a serious issue, but I think I'm like, there is the phenomenon where if the more you chase happiness, the more depressed you become, because you don't just sit and accept what you had. You continue chasing something, and it's like chasing a drug or anything else, where pretty much you're going to get fleeting moments of it and not going to get much else. So to a certain extent, I think that's been part of it. And then also, like, I just am genuinely interested in a bunch of stuff. And I, like, back in Atlanta, at the same time I'm writing, I started writing novels. I actually started doing stand-up. And, like, that's where I got the idea for the Greek God story. It was actually, like, I was just trying to think of funny premises. And it's just a result of, like, I think there is that weird dichotomy in a lot of introverts where there's a portion of them that is like screaming to be extrovert. Like, I know a lot of comics you get them off stage, they can be pretty quiet and somewhat timid.
I'm that way.
You put them on stage. Yeah. Put them on stage.
At least I want to go home after perform, you know?
That's a good point. But yeah, you put them up. It's just something gets released, and I think it's also, in my case, being introverted and spending so much of my life like trying to hide. It wasn't because I didn't have anything to say or I didn't want anything to say. It was because I was scared of other people. So it's like I've always wanted to say things and wanted to talk to other people, but there's just been an element of anxiety there. What I found in performing, strangely, is I'm more comfortable doing that than I am in a lot of just normal social scenarios, because when performing on stage, I am in pretty much total control. That's like, I am being a lot of the time. Everyone is facing me. Everyone is listening to what I'm saying. They can choose to ignore it if they want to, but like, you can't heckle, you can't walk out. Nobody can talk back to me. Nobody can argue with me. So I can just say things. And I don't have to worry about, like, because so much of the anxiety always came from what is the other person going to do in reaction to what I'm saying. And
that's a good way to break it down, for sure.
Yeah. And once the whole thing became like, will they laugh or not laugh, and that's the only thing that's going to happen, then it became like way easier to navigate that. Because those are 2 possible outcomes instead of like 8 billion in everyday life.
Are you a 2 sport athlete there? Can you go back to stand up, or do you feel like it's way different? There's a split there that you want to concentrate more on the storytelling aspect.
If I go back to it now, I think I'm just going to merge it. It started out when I started out. I actually This is how naive I was. I do so many things being completely naive. Like, I broke my ankle. This is just a small example of how sheltered my entire life has been. I was 23 when I broke my ankle. In the hospital, like, I'm waiting for all these forms to get filled out and all this other shit. And the doctor comes out and just gives me the prescription for Percocet then. And so I just take one, and I was like, okay. And then, like, by the time everything's set out, like, it's kicked in. But what I don't know is that you can get high from Percocet. I'm 23, and I don't know the painkillers can get you high. So
was the most high I've ever been in my life was on Percocet.
That shit was a fucking wreck. That whole story ended with, I told you I have no boundaries, me losing my virginity to a married woman with 2 kids, and then 2 days later, chucking all of the pills into the woods behind my house.
That was not on the label at all.
Again.
That was not a warning label at all.
Nope. Fucking, I never went near that shit. I've had doctors on 3 separate occasions prescribe them, and I've said no. Like, I'm not, never.
It's funny you said that, because like I got to throw my back out when I was a lot heavier, and I had basically slept walk for the first time in my life. So like, fast forward to a couple of years ago when I broke my toe by hitting on the side of the bed, I just took like codeine, like, or Tylenol 3. When they said, hey, we'll give you Percocet or Tramadol, I'm like, no, sir, I'm not doing it. I'm good.
Next time the doctor does that, it hands a little slip over and you go, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I know, right? It's a toe. I'll live. No married woman around. I'm just kidding.
You try to fuck up my life. I came here for help.
I know. How much are premiums? But I'm sorry, I cut you off there. You were saying...
It did just strike me that you can go legally get Percocet for a $20 copay.
Yeah.
They're supposed to, like, I don't know how much is on the street. I'm too scared. I've never bought a drug off the street. Like, that's scary. What was I saying? I completely forget.
You're talking about, like, because you had no filter, and you tried Percocet, and then you realized you chucked it in the woods after having sex with this married woman that was a wife and had kids, and
yeah,
no. That happened. Okay, moving on. So, 6 weeks ago, or about 2 months ago. What? It's true. I was there. I heard it. I did not make this up.
I know, but it's just hilarious because, like, there's only the beginning and the end, and when I just hear the beginning and end of that story,
yeah,
without any of the qualifiers or explanations or like any of the we're actually good people shit, I sound like a fucking awful human being.
You mean legend? Yes, you do.
Like a drug-addled, wife-fucking, home-wrecking, like, that's so bad.
And if I write a story about that, I won't get you any royalties, because that's still character trait.
It's a good story, too. I've actually told that story on stage in front of people.
Was it a story about Popeye on Percocet?
Hell no.
Instead of spinach? Yeah.
No. Just Xanax. So it was the Rex Theater in Pittsburgh, which means the max occupancy is 820. So it's 820 people. I told that in photo, which was kind of insane. Like but it's also partially because like I don't have any funny anecdotes.
Right. That was hilarious. I don't know what you're talking about.
No. It's like what I mean by funny anecdote is like I was 17 and was smoking weed with my friends behind a 7-Eleven, and a cop came out and like chased us through the woods, and then he ended up going back and 7-Eleven.
Well, you say it like that. That's not funny at all. Hello, everyone. I was 7 years old. Boo!
What you don't know is that's how I tell stories on stage.
Right.
I have a very dry sense of humor. It's about as dry as you possibly could stand. Yeah, so... Oh, no, I lost it again. Too many tangents.
You were saying that you performed that story in front of 800 people in Pittsburgh. Was it Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually grew up in Pittsburgh.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
lived...
Are you proud or you're like, Pittsburgh?
It's somewhat proud. I always struggle a little bit with the whole I'm from there and therefore it's awesome identity, because like I didn't choose to be from there.
Right.
In the same way I didn't choose to be like on Earth, so I can still dislike parts of Earth.
What other options are there though, Nathan?
No, I'm not saying there are other options. I'm saying that's exactly my point. There are no other options.
Yeah.
You get one option for when you're born. So why are you so proud of being born there when actually it wasn't an option? You were placed there by the universe or whatever. So, yeah, I don't know. It's always, but on the same, but I still kind of, on the other hand, I get it, because like I am kind of proud about being from Pittsburgh. I like telling people I'm from Pittsburgh. I like when people shit on the city, which is really easy to do. Yeah, part of me like gets a little, you can't make fun of my little brother syndrome.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
a lot of the Brooklyn hipsters moved to Pittsburgh after Brooklyn's Renaissance. They kind of went to that city, and they got hipsterized right after.
Pittsburgh's mix.
Yeah, totally. They were all migrating there.
It kind of is, actually. Like, it has experienced a huge tech what is the word?
Renaissance, resurgence,
whatever.
Renovation,
yeah,
revival. I don't know what you're going for.
One of the things I was thinking of. But yeah, it's really pretty now. And when I was driving, it was not. But there's still portions that are just gross.
Yeah.
But it's really characters. It's so many. I remember a writing professor of mine said once, you can only write about a place once you leave.
Absolutely.
And then she like pulled out all these examples of people who like tried to write about their own hometowns and just couldn't, and then they left, and their next book ended up being about their hometown. Like my favorite book was Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, and he said the whole point of him writing it was that he had left London and moved to America, and he missed the city. Hemingway wrote tons and tons about places in America only after he moved to Europe, and he would only be able to write about Paris once he got out of Paris. Like, it's this weird thing, distance. I don't know.
Yeah, this is do too.
But weirdly, I've never written about Pittsburgh
until the next book. So I want to say that I guess a few short weeks ago, you posted a video about you performing some of your work, and you were talking about that just a minute ago about performing storytelling. You know, you're sharing a piece of yourself with a stage, and you seem pretty hyped about it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but walk me through that feeling and what's next for your storytelling side of things.
That's a good question. I don't know. So after, I'll tell another story. To brother. So I went to my brother's wedding reception last year, and I gave a speech, and they got a standing ovation. Like 300 people standing ovation at a wedding reception.
Wow, man!
Like, yeah, and I know it's like, yeah. So like, but okay. So that happened, and after I sat down, and like things had kind of settled, I then sat there for maybe an hour and a half as people came up, like over 100 easily, came up to say something to me about it. And I went home so depressed, like so incredibly sad. And you would think it would be totally the opposite. But the reason I went home sad, and I called my friend, and I was like, this just happened. Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, why am I continuing to go after these jobs that, like, it didn't occur to me until fairly recently. Dude, there's a reason you've been, like, late every day for every job you've ever had. It's been, like, impossible for you to be on time.
Right.
Meetings, same way. Like, it's because I don't care. Like, part of me does, absolutely. Part of me very much cares about the work that I do, and I want to do a good job. But there's always this other part of me that cares about these other things pretty much to an equal amount, or actually probably a lot more. So I call my friend, he's like, yeah, I mean, I'm like, I don't know why I'm so upset. It's because you can do this. Like, you just made a fucking wedding reception with a standing ovation. And one guy said it sounded like somebody reading me a novel. And the whole thing was 7 minutes long. So I got back to San Francisco, and I immediately started contacting like the person who teaches all of the public speaking stuff at USF about basically what avenues there are to turn this into some type of career. And the only real thing that comes around is like motivational speaking is pretty much it. And a lot of those people get that avenue through either they're already famous or they have like a very hard story, and I don't know. So where the public speaking thing goes, I'm not really sure. I can continue doing like the telling the story in front of people's circuit, but there's no real incentive at the end of that in terms of practice. Like you get no book deal, you get no anything deal. It's like all of that is still just fun because it still isn't recognized as something that is a real marketable skill. So I don't really know where that goes. I might just basically transform it into stand-up and just tell it. Because that's basically what I did anyway. It's like, because every story I told was so heavy, the only way to make them any kind of palatable is to put as many jokes as there in there as I could. And that's generally how I've operated. So yeah, I think my storytelling will just turn into stand-up storytelling.
Well, that may be an avenue. And who knows, maybe someone might see this and go, I'm booking that guy for my wedding reception. The best man speechwriter.
You clean up like $50 at a time.
Yeah, that's the game. But let's talk about another aspect, right? It's the pandemic of 2020. We've pretty much been locked in. At least I'm in Los Angeles, so we've been locked in for about 3 months. And we're now opening up. I know other places nationwide have their own thing. I mean, how has that changed your process, if at all?
It hasn't, because my process is pretty much to write 1,000 words a day, and I've done that every day for a decade. And I have to basically work out every day, and I managed to get TRX bands. So to me, it's not been that drastically different from my average life.
Oh, just like that. You're like, no, it's the same. Yeah, all you people with your lamenting quarantine life hashtags, I'm good. I'm cool. You know?
I mean, well, I definitely won't say that. In terms of like writing process, that's the same, but maybe that's not even the same if I really stretch it out, because I have such large anxiety issues, especially at the beginning of this, I just wasn't able to pay attention to any of it really, except for like the absolute essential information. So I just started listening to podcasts from like 2018 back, and I started with like Doug Loves Movies, which is a comic by Doug Benson, or Doug Benson is a comic who does that podcast.
Yeah.
And that started in like 2009, I think. And so I've just been binging through all that stuff. And like, that's all my entertainment has been kind of weirdly nostalgic, because it's been from a decade back or so.
Wow. Well, quick question out of my bag of cliche questions. Someone's listening here. They're inspired by the man Nathan Spicer. Do you have, I don't say advice, but a tip or a trick, a pro tip, a thing you learned on your journey that you can probably share with someone else?
Yeah, who else is in the room with you?
What do you mean?
And who asked you the question?
I said our listeners in general.
Someone here.
No, our listeners.
Oh.
Like, people who listen to the show normally would always tell me, hey, look, we were having guests. Ask them for any advice. There's no one here.
You're sitting on a chair.
Yeah, that'd be kind of scary. I live alone, so that's a whole other issue altogether. What are you doing here? Why are you like making fun of my show? No, just...
No. I was just very confused. I now forget what the question was.
Tips, tricks, advice, pro tips, things you wouldn't do, pitfalls.
Okay. Yeah. I was about to say don't be scared, and I think that is the most ridiculous thing that anyone can ever tell anybody, because one, you really can't control that. And two, there's usually a very good reason why you're scared. And that's the key phrase, is that there's a good reason. So if you're going to go do something that is potentially frightening and as simple as asking a girl out to like bungee jumping or whatever else, the reason you're so scared is maybe because, yeah, there's some disappointment, but it's frightening because of how much you care. if you didn't care about the girl you were asking out, it wouldn't matter whether or not she rejected. Well, it would matter some because nobody likes being rejected, but it would matter a hell of a lot less if you didn't care. Same thing with like bungee jumping. If it fails, well, you die. But
wow,
if you don't care about being successful at bungee jumping, then it won't be a big deal that you die. It's all a matter of like. So I've tried in recent years to remind myself that like the reason I'm scared of doing whatever it is because I care a lot about it. And that doesn't mean I have to do a great job. That doesn't mean anything else, but that is something in my life that gives my life meaning if I can be that scared about fucking it up.
That's great, man. Nathan, man, it's been a while, and don't be a stranger because I know you're doing things. I like to hang on and creep on you on Twitter and be like, "Oh, what's going on?" But if you can tell the people who listen, no one in my room, if you tell people who are listening to the show how they can find you, keep up with you. Out of it. Yeah, quiet you. Where's social media? Where people can find you? Where people can read your books, buy your stuff. Like, here's time to put yourself over.
Yeah, so I don't have any books out. I short stories in the books, and that's been a conscious decision because I like. Let's put it this way: best case scenario, 5 million people read it. That's terrifying to me because of how much I care. So I'm trying to get over that barrier. Find me on Twitter at it's my last name and then my first initials, which is Spicer and just Spicer. And then that's really the only public profile I have. So. Yep.
And how often do you tweet? I'm just curious. Like, what's your mix of social media to creating stuff?
It's somewhat sporadic. I mean, I can go like, it's picked up more since the quarantine. So I guess that
fair
also has changed my process. But I mean, I can go like 3 or 4 days without doing it, and then send out a section one day, and then yeah. So it's usually like 1 or 2 a day, maybe.
Yeah. So make sure you follow Spicer N on Twitter because I know I do, and this guy is about to blow up when it comes to writing and all that stuff. But thank you so much for checking out this edition of New Amsterdam Radio. Until next time, the city is yours.
So much fun. Once again, big thanks to Nathan Spicer taking time out of his schedule to sit and chat about the process and the things that he's working on. And I hope he can come back for a future episode for sure. As always, my name is Flobo Boyce, the host, the captain of this ship. I'm not sure if it's a starship or one of those water kinds, but I'll be back soon. But until then, you can follow me all over social media. We're talking on Twitter. I'm at Flobo Boyce. On Instagram, I'm at Flobito. The website's flobito.com. And you can buy a t-shirt, support the show that way over at flobito.threadless.com. And the Patreon. You know, every guest we have on the show, the full interview without any cuts, any edits is available over at the Patreon. So do yourself a favor, sign up, become a supporter, get bonus content, see the whole process of how we make New Amsterdam a thing. And I'll be back a little bit later this week. My birthday edition of New Amsterdam Radio, I'm sitting with the really interesting Jackie Ray. We worked together in a couple projects in the hosting space, so she'll have some stories that we'll definitely share. But until then, I have to say it's New Amsterdam, and this city is yours.